Here we go. You ain't mine. Got time. What time is it? Morris Day at night. Victorious Victor. Thumb that bass. I hit you back.
Hey, we here? All right. Well, what's up, guys? Welcome. This is gonna be a super cool thing. We got. This is gonna be a really fun event. We're gonna talk about musicianship, drums, and a whole bunch of stuff in between. So, coming up to the stage right now is a guy that I've known from the internet for a while, and then we just connected recently. He's somebody that I consider to be one of the sort of foremost opinions on the stuff we're gonna be talking about: how to serve a church musically, how to use our art to lift up the church. So would you guys just give a warm welcome to my friend Steve Goold?
Am I going here? There we go. Right on. I'm not even going to come up there for right now. I'm going to
Nice.
sit right here. Hi. Jason and I just met like 5 hours ago. He came and picked me up from the tour bus because we have a day off. This tour that I'm on right now has a day off in the tour. We're in Napa where we're going to play tomorrow. And he gave me a shout on Instagram when I had posted the tour dates a month ago about this. He's like, I see you have a day off in this part of the country. Would you be willing to come here? And we were joking in the car on the way here about like, we didn't really know, neither of us really knew if the other person was like a murderer, maybe. We're just meeting for the first time, hopping in the car together. I'm saying that because I'm just grateful that this has materialized, like this moment. I'm happy to be in this with you guys. My name is Steve. You guys, I hope I will catch your names over the course of the evening just in conversation with each other. Raise your hand if you played the drums. Wow, all right, so most of you. Raise your hand if you do not play the drums. Okay, that's great. Knowing the percentages there, I might go a little deeper into drum world at various times than I would otherwise if the ratio had been opposite. But everything that I am talking about is just, it's more music, all right? And I know that I'm in a church. I love Jesus, and my dad was a pastor for 40 years, and I'm on staff at a mega church in Arizona. So when we talk about music in the church context, I think we as evangelical Christians have an instinct to maybe spiritualize things. And at the outset, I just want to tell you, I'm probably not going to do that very much. Not because I don't like that, but because I'm just going to speak to you from my musical experience, for the most part, all right? Also, I'm guilty of doing like workshops like this and just talking the whole time. So I won't do that. I will play some. But it's not about the playing in my head. And this could be, personality types, and we differ in how we understand and how we think about the craft of music making. Where I'm sitting at age 38 now, having done this for 27 years, like played drums for 27 years, I feel like it's such a mental game, more than a physical game. Even the physical aspects of it are not actually physically demanding. They're just kind of like confusing. So thinking about what I play, talking about it, talking with others and thinking together has proven to be really helpful for me. So that's what you can expect. I want to talk with you guys a little bit about the concept of excellence, not as if I'm introducing you to the concept of excellence. Of course you know what that is. But what does excellence mean in a worship team? And what is that like for us as worship team musicians? Like, what's excellence mean in the concept of professional football? It's a totally different discipline. What's excellence mean in, you work on Wall Street or whatever? Like, as worship team musicians, even the specific context of a worship team, excellence takes some shapes that it doesn't necessarily take in other contexts where we would still use the word excellence. So that's where I'm coming from here. And that's a bunch of preamble. I want to pray really quick, not because I have to, but because I want to. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for these people here. Thank you for this church and the ministry that they are having in this area. Thank you for your goodness to us, and I pray that you would be present, that your Spirit would be here with us as we talk and think and just are together. In the name of Jesus, amen. Okay, so I'll start out by playing a little bit and give you some context for my playing. Mostly because I think meaning doesn't really exist outside of context. Okay, so here's a drum set. It's just a drum set. I didn't bring anybody else with me to play other instruments. So right out of the gate, I'm going to play the drums solo. Like just the drums, by myself. Which is important because I'm just telling you I'm not going to pretend that there's a band with me. And the way that I would touch the drum set, the way that I would approach playing music when there's no other players with me is going to change. So that, the way I play when I'm performing with Matt tomorrow night will be very different than the way I play right now, because that'll be a full band playing Matt's music, and this is going to be me playing solo. Another, I think, really important context thing that I want to just be clear about is that I'm going to improvise, because I think improvising is really fun. Also because there's no reason for me not to. Like we didn't put a set list together. You guys didn't buy tickets to hear your favorite songs that you're coming like. So I'm just going to make something up. I think about improvising as kind of like a barometer of one's ability to speak a language. And what I mean by that is, I think we all improvise all day long when we talk to each other. Like I got in the car with Jason earlier. Like, what are we going to talk about? There's no script. We didn't plan it. And every question that he asks me and every question that I ask him can be answered however we want to. So it's very possible that Jason and I spoke sentences to each other in the car earlier, or with John and Catherine, right? Caitlin, sorry. Over lunch, the four of us had lunch together. We probably spoke sentences to each other that we had never spoken before in our entire lives. You ever think about that? Like a construction of words that you've never said before. And that, like, wow, I've never spoken that sentence. But it wasn't hard to speak it because I know English. Does that make sense? That's what an improvising musician starts to discover. There's a language of music, and I want to be able to speak it without having to get up in the morning and practice the sentences that I plan on saying. So I think improvising is really important in that regard, and I'm just going to demonstrate, I guess. I used to do this all the time as a kid for fun, and then it turned into kind of a practicing discipline. Because I'm up here playing a solo, I'm going to try to tell you a story. I'm definitely not going to try and show off. Have you guys ever been really moved by a story? That's just such a powerful thing in human experience. Whether it's a movie, or perhaps it's like a motivational speech, but it takes the shape of it's got a beginning and it's got a development, it's got an ending. Take that, juxtapose it against compare that to like a clown. And I don't mean a clown as in like a joke. I mean like a clown as in like a dude who is on a unicycle juggling like 5 apples and taking bites out of some of them on a wire, like a high wire. That's amazing, right? Can any of you do that? I can't do that. So on a certain level, watching a clown do something incredible is entertaining because we can say, wow, well done. But the experience of a story is so different. The experience of being impacted by a story where you kind of go, whoa, man, this matters. It's so different than entertaining. It's such a different thing than a clown. Do you get that? So as far as context goes, I'm going to play by myself, I'm going to improvise it, and I'm going to try to tell you a story because that's the game of music that I'm in. Like, that's the reason that I want to play music, is to impact you with a story. I think about the word whoa that people say when they're impacted by a good story versus the word wow from watching The Clown. Whoa versus wow, I hope I can get you to say whoa. We'll see, because I'm going to make it up. Don't know how it's going to go. All right. Okay, that's that. Thank you for clapping. I'm going to ask you about that in a bit. I'm going to ask you about the story that I told and how it made you feel. That's not like it's going to be a quiz. Don't forget about what that was. However, it's not that important because I totally just made it up just now. And I was having a lot of fun. I don't know if you could tell. I love playing music. I love playing this instrument. I love the way music itself makes me feel. Like the kind of emotional currency that music operates with. And over my career, my life experience of playing music, I've just learned, I've been making observations, I've been paying attention for my whole life as a musician about what's working and what isn't. How am I feeling? What's a good way to accomplish this feeling and that feeling? Which other musicians around me are doing a good job making me feel something? Just paying attention to a lot of that stuff. I kind of have an analytical personality, so that's probably why I'm paying attention. But I'm also just it's my favorite thing. Music is my favorite thing. Skateboarded a little bit when I was like, 8, 9, 10. Played some video games. That stuff felt fun. And then when I was 11 and I met the drum set, I was like, oh, this is what fun actually is. Redefined fun and has been my favorite thing ever since. And that's why I do it, and anything that I'm about to tell you about excellence and the worship team context and all that stuff, it's just my own observation, okay? Like I want to be open-handed about, I have zero authority on the matter. It's nice of you to comment that you trust my input about it. And truthfully, playing drums in a church service hasn't existed for very long because drums weren't allowed in churches, or not most churches, in the 80s. I started playing drums in church in 92, and if you find the average Joe and ask him how long he's been playing drums in church, there are not that many people that have been doing it for longer than me. But that still doesn't make me an authority on the matter. It just means I've had that many years to make observations to myself about what I think works and what doesn't. That's where this is coming from, okay? And I hope to be informal about it. That's why I'm sitting like this. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and ask a question. And now I'm diving in. Excellence. Excellence in a music team, in a worship team. I'm gonna give you 4 definitions to consider, okay? 4 angles. The first 3 are kind of esoteric, hippie stuff. And then the 4th one is a very specific metaphor diagram that I use with my team in Phoenix at the church I work at. I'm the lead music director at a church that has so many people that attend every weekend. We have 9 campuses across the Phoenix Valley, and my job is to oversee all of the musicians and schedule them at all of the campuses. So I've got this large pool of drummers and bass players and keyboard players and guitar players that I am constantly, I'm kind of their pastor. That's actually a specific part of my job description, is to work with them in musical development, but also spiritual development and discipleship. I'm the head coach of all the musicians. So the 4th definition that I give you is something that I've talked with all of them about. And here we go. First thing, excellence. What is it? What is excellence in a worship team? I think excellence is a gift, okay? And I'm sure you've heard and used the word gift in correlation to a musical performer. And the context most of the time is wow, that guy has a gift. Man, that dude is gifted. She is a gifted vocalist, right? You guys have heard that gift used in that way? That's not what I mean. I want to use the word gift here as something that we give each other. Your excellence is a gift that you give to your fellow musicians. It's a gift that you give to your listeners. Or at least you have that opportunity. If you choose to develop excellence, it serves as a gift that you're giving to the people you're playing with and the people that you're playing for. all right? Here's a analogy. I'm on this tour right now with Matt, and that's like 11 of us dudes in a tour bus together. And I am an autonomous individual, so I can make my own decisions, right? Like that's kind of an American way to look at things. And I don't have to take a shower if I don't want to. And I don't gotta do my laundry. You know, like I'm an adult. I'll just decide for myself that I wanna do something else with my time besides shower after the show and put on clean clothes. Pretty soon, man, my bunk area in the bus smells a certain kind of way because of my decisions. And everybody around me in the bus now has to pay for my decisions, right? Because we're sharing that space together. Even more so on an airplane. Like if I decide to go for a week and a half without showering or changing my clothes at all, and then I show up to the airplane and I sit down right next to these people that we're gonna be on the flight for the next 3.5 hours together. This is like intentionally just kind of an awkward topic to discuss, but recognize with me how much of a gift our own personal hygiene is to the people that we share space with. I think this works exactly the same way in music. When I'm playing with a great bass player, I'm like, dude, thank you for being so great. I tell that to our worship leaders all the time. I try to, I want to be encouraging. Try to look for positive things to say. This particular worship leader has really great time with her acoustic guitar playing. And I'm like, thank you for that. It is really a gift to me as the drummer that I don't have to fight you or the clique with the time feel. Like, thank you for being a good enough acoustic guitar player to make that job that I have as the drummer easier. Does that make sense? Here's another little anecdote. Diana Krall, jazz vocalist, she used to use Ray Brown on bass all the time, upright bass. This is me pretending I'm an upright bass player. Ray Brown was a legendary jazz upright bass player. Diana would hire him. Somebody asked her once about, it might have been after Ray died. He died like a couple years ago. Talking about Ray Brown, why do you hire Ray Brown? She said, oh man, when I walk into the rehearsal space or the studio and I see Ray is on bass, I just exhale with relief because I trust him. Which is a huge gift that he is giving to her. Because her name is on the marquee of the theater where they're playing. Her name is on the tickets that people have bought. Her reputation is on the line. She's standing at the front of the stage. The eyes are on her. It's her voice. And Ray's just there to help. And she doesn't have to worry about him. Consider with me that every person has bandwidth of things that they can focus on at any given moment. And as a performer, you don't want to burn any of your bandwidth worrying about your band members. So suddenly, Ray Brown's excellence on the bass is giving Diana Krall more bandwidth to perform with. What a gift. I think it works the exact same way for your worship leader. If your worship leader is worried about whether or not you're going to do the thing on the bridge that we all discussed, then they're not thinking of, they're burning bandwidth in the chorus leading up to that bridge. And I want to give the gift of my excellence to every worship leader I play with, to every artist I play with, to every band member I play with, and to every audience I play for. So that's what I'm getting at, right? Excellence is a gift. Any questions about that? Yeah, man. What's your name? Jeremy, I'm Steve.
Hey, Steve.
My wife is the biggest Cub fan that I've ever met. She's,
Sure we get along.
yep, I imagine.
To that end, when you are doing your part to give your gift to everyone else and other people, I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced this, the level of commitment, professionalism, excellence is lacking in some areas, not because of talent, but because of preparation. How do you approach that and
Yeah, sure. Okay.
How do you approach that?
I am going to answer that partly right now and partly with a different point that I'm going to make in a bit, because that's definitely a big part of my job as an MD. I will say this in regards to your question. I don't want to be that guy in any situation that I'm in. I don't want to be the guy that's bringing less excellence than I could bring. I don't want to be the guy that's lowering the median excellence level by my presence in the team. So that's part of why I'm presenting this to you. Like, please consider that your own excellence is a gift that you give to the people that you play with. And then you can just decide what kind of gift that you want to give them. You know, like, here's this kind of junky thing from Walmart that I didn't spend any money on, versus here's something that I've taken a long time and care to craft for you. I take it very seriously. Like, at my church, we have, campuses that are this size. This room is full. There's what, 1,100, 1,200 people in here? And I'm the one raising my hand to say, I'll take the drumsticks. Like, that's a huge role that that's an important role that I'm playing. Like, and I want to give everybody the gift of my excellence with the drumsticks if I'm going to be the person to raise my hand and say, I'll take the drumsticks. So I'll get to the dealing with others in a second. I'm just trying to give that to you as a motivational tool, really. Okay, point number 2. Excellence is a stewardship. I'll call it that. It's a stewardship. And let's rewind and talk about that word gift again in the original context that I brought up. In my role at the church in Phoenix, I'm the dude that meets with you if you want to be on the worship team. Let's say you just recently started going to my church and you see the worship team and you're like, oh, it looks like fun, I want to get in on that. So eventually you're talking to me because I'm the funnel, or I'm the gatekeeper. And we're talking with each other and I'm like, hey man, glad you're interested. Why do you want to be on the team? Like, well, I play guitar for a long time now, and I want to use my gift for God. You guys ever heard that phrase? Or maybe you've said that phrase? I have. In that sense, the word gift feels like a skill set. Like I'm referring to my skill set. I want to use my skill set for God. Skill sets are not things that get bestowed on you. Skill sets are not things that you just get overnight because you want them. A skill set is developed. And developing a skill set requires that you steward your time. You steward your effort levels. You steward your money. You steward your passion. Right? Like you decide how much to give and how much not. How much, like, effort, passion, money, like time. See what I'm saying? That's where skill sets come from. And here I am talking to my potential new guitar player. Like, tell me about your guitar playing. Like, this guy's my age, he's 38. It's like, oh, I used to play a lot in college. And I'm like doing a little math, like, oh, you're my age, college was 18 years ago. I used to play in the worship team in college. Like, oh, great. Have you played much since? Like, no, but my wife just got me a guitar for Christmas, so I want to get back into it. All right, awesome. But now it's starting to frame for me what this person's gift actually is. Maybe not a skill set. Maybe what they imagine their gift to be is, how about this? Let me tell you this. I did not choose to enjoy drumming. Like, I started playing piano, and I didn't necessarily enjoy it. I didn't hate it, it just was there. I didn't choose to enjoy snowboarding. I started snowboarding and I was like, this is awesome, man, I love this. I played disc golf all the time. I played like the game frisbee golf all the time. Jason and I almost played today. We decided to just sit and have coffee instead. But the point is, I I didn't start playing disc golf because I was like, I choose to enjoy this activity. Is that really how life ever works? You just you do a thing and you're like, oh, I really like this. Almost like somebody else chose for me. Which on some levels feels like a gift. I will tell you that I really loved discovering the drum set. I felt lucky. I had friends who didn't seem to love doing anything. You ever seen that meme, I wish I loved anything as much as this guy loves what he's doing right now? That's how I felt about the drums when I found them. And I didn't choose that. I'm thankful for that. If that is something that Almighty God authored, then that feels like a gift to me. And I bet you guys as music team members can relate. Playing music it's fun, right? That's gonna be my next point in just a second. The point is, there's a difference between a skill set and enjoying something. I've been playing disc golf for 20 years, and I'm not very good at it, compared to if I had really tried to develop that skill set. See the difference there? I love disc golf, and I love drums, and I chose to develop a skill set on the drum set, which took a lot of stewardship. And that's pretty necessary if you're gonna use the word excellence to describe your relationship to your craft. Hear me on that? Excellence is a gift that you give to the people you play with and the people you play for. Excellence is a stewardship that you exhibit with the way you spend your time and your money and your passion and your effort. Third thing, excellence, really, it is a joy. It is a deep joy. It is so fun to be good at something. Yeah? Amen. The better I get at the drum set, the more fun I have playing it. I remember the days when I was arm wrestling the thing, trying to get it to obey me, and walking out on stage, not sure if it would obey me, right? I might lose this arm wrestle in front of all these people. And that's not a fun feeling. Let me go back to the bandwidth thing. With a lot of my private drum students, I use this analogy called the mental dollar. I think of it as a number that we would put on our ability to focus, our focusing bandwidth. You've got $1 to spend on thinking about things. And this is kind of if I'm watching TV and my wife is talking to me and I don't hear her, I don't even know she's talking to me because I'm spending my whole dollar on the thing that I'm watching. Whatever it is interesting enough that it has captured my entire dollar. Versus when I'm walking down the street with Jason earlier, we went to this coffee shop in the little, the cool looking downtown area, and I'm simultaneously walking and not tripping, talking to Jason, also noticing how pretty the fountains are, kind of spreading my dollar around a few different things. And then I'm driving in my car to go somewhere, and I'm looking, is this my street coming up? And I go to turn the radio down. You guys ever done that? As if that's gonna help me see the street sign better. But it's just, the radio seems to be interfering with my dollar. I wanna spend my whole dollar on looking at the street sign. Does this make sense? Mental dollar, okay? Everybody has $1. This is my theory. There are certainly those outliers among us that seem to operate as if they have $2, right? I don't think they do. I think they've learned how to spend their dollar wisely. And some of us are not spending it very wisely. Practice. Let's say I'm working on a difficult drum pattern. 14-year-old Steve is trying to figure out this drum fill from a Pearl Jam record. And I figure it out and I can do it. I can play the drum fill, but it takes my whole dollar to do it. So I keep practicing it, and pretty soon I can play the drum fill and it's only costing me 60 cents. That's what practice does. It lowers the cost of something. First time any musician plays with a click track, it usually takes 80 cents. just to stay with the click track. So if you're playing a pattern on your instrument that costs you 40 cents, and you play with the click while the click costs you 80 cents, one of those two things is going to fall apart. You're going to get off from the click track, or you're going to screw up the pattern because you've only got $1. So what's the solution? You practice both of them. Practice playing with the click track until it's not so expensive. Practice the pattern until it's not so expensive. Most of what I play on the drum set at this point costs me like 5 cents. Not because I'm some superhuman, but because I've been playing for so long. And I really don't like walking out on stage intending to play something that's going to cost me any more than 5 cents. Because being on stage at all is going to make me nervous. Like even while I'm speaking to you guys, I'm like kind of making eye contact with some of you, and it takes some of my dollar. So for sure, being on stage is going to cost 30 cents. Here's a little insight into Steve Gould's professional relationship with a click track. I can't get that thing to be any cheaper than 25 cents. I've been playing with a click forever, and it doesn't ever drop down to the 5 cent, 2 cent, 1 cent. Like, there are a bunch of drum patterns. When I was taking drum lessons with the drum teacher that really formed me in my college years, he would make me play paradiddles and other rudiments while spelling words to him out loud. He would tell me a word, and I'd have to spell it to him while I was playing the rudiment, which is basically proving that the rudiment costs me nothing. Like, I'm practicing the rudiment until it's free, because in order to spell a word out loud, you have to like picture the word in your head and then say the letters in the order that you see them, and that takes almost your whole dollar for any person to do that, especially if it's a long word like dictionary or whatever. So the point is, certain things you can practice until they're free. That's actually quite helpful. Not the click track. I cannot get that thing to be cheaper than 25 cents. Mostly because physiologically, I'm so amped whenever I'm on stage. I want to go faster, and I have to keep like reminding myself, no, you got to stay here. Some of the coolest gigs that I've ever done in the most amazing venues that I never dreamt I'd be able to perform in, my memory of playing in those places is just yelling at myself to not rush the whole time. Like, I was so amped that the click was costing me 50 cents. Imagining that the click will ever cost me nothing has proven to be a mistake. At this point, I'm learning how to always spend at least 25 cents of my dollar on the click track. Okay, back to my point. Excellence is a joy. You don't get to enjoy something without spending some of your dollar on it. This is part of my theory. Being nervous costs 30 cents. Playing with the click track costs 25 cents. Remembering the song form costs me 5 cents. Cost me 50 cents when I first started learning the song, worked it down with my personal prep time. Playing the patterns that I intend to play cost me 10 cents. We're at 70 now, but I got $1. I got 30 cents to spend on just enjoying this moment. Because you don't get to enjoy the moment without spending some dollar on it. And sometimes people will use that as a pushback as to why they don't want to use the click track. Can't really enjoy it when I use the click track. Like, that's not the click track's fault. You gotta lower the cost of that thing, and then you can enjoy it. Then you got some buffer. Does that make sense? Now check this out. Enjoying yourself while you play music is contagious. The people who are watching you play music, the people who are playing music with you, ooh, that invites them in. Music has such a powerful unifying effect on human beings. We're all in this airplane together, and all of us have done, our hygiene, we all smell good. We're all happy to be in the airplane together. And everybody's in a good mood. And it's so contagious when people are in happiness, joy. It's so contagious. So when I've got this buffer, when I've done my due diligence to be comfortable with the click track, comfortable with the song form, comfortable with the patterns I'm gonna play, I've got some buffer left in my dollar. I can really enjoy myself. Now I'm like leading worship. Because people can see me, and like, the joy of the Lord is a term that we use in church to talk about this with each other, right? Like, People are like, people have told me my whole life that they really enjoy watching me play. And I always say like, oh, I'm glad to hear that. I'm not performing. I'm having a great time. I really am. But I've learned over the years that that is something that I'm actually drawing them in. If I do my practice so that I have enough buffer to really enjoy myself, that in and of itself is a form of excellence. Does this make sense? Excellence is a gift that you give to the people you play with, the people you perform for. It is a stewardship of your time and your efforts and your passion and your money, and excellence is just a joy to exhibit and to behold. All right, those are the esoteric things. Fourth thing I want to tell you about excellence, a little more involved. It's a metaphor that I use with all of my players in Phoenix. I call it, it's a pyramid. I call it the excellence pyramid. Do you want to do a pause button and look for your little girl?
No.
I mean,
I saw somebody I need to fight with later.
oh. That's such a great answer. Okay, the excellence pyramid. Sounds a little bit Ron Swanson-y, but this is what it is, okay? There's these different layers of excellence, and the top layer is harder to get to than the middle layer, which is harder to get to than the bottom layer. So you work your way up, so it's vertical. And it's like this because the bottom layer, there's a lot of things that qualify. There's a lot of different ways to get in the bottom layer. Narrower to get to the middle layer. You got to narrow things down. And the top layer is actually pretty specific. Okay, so that's why it's the excellence pyramid. All right, 3 levels. Here's the first level, the ground level. It's called not wrong. Like, don't play any wrong notes. Okay, now music is funny, it's an art form, and like the word wrong itself is kind of weird. Miles Davis used to say, like, you don't play a wrong note until you play the next one. Right? Because context informs everything. There are notes that create tension, and then that tension gets resolved, and wow, that was nice. But we all know what wrong notes actually mean in the context of a worship team, okay? Like for the bass player, like you gotta play the root of the chord. If you play a half step off from the root of the chord, that's gonna sound wrong. The dissonance that it creates is gonna be interpreted as a wrong note. Or for me as the drummer, if I go barreling into the second chorus when we were supposed to actually drop out, like that's even though I didn't do anything out of time, or I don't have any pitches to play a half step off from the root of the chord, but I did that wrong. I'm saying it's interpreted as a wrong note. And yeah, the yes, it's their fault. That's a good twist. Here's my point about that. At my church, we have 5 services at most of the campuses. 2 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. Most weekends have 4 songs, maybe 5 songs. If you are gonna get through all 5 songs, all 5 services, with every musician on stage hitting no wrong notes, that's easier said than done. That is not a chump accomplishment. So aiming for the bottom of the pyramid is not something to be taken lightly. I'm just telling you that it's the bottom of the pyramid. It's just where we start. At my church, this is the headspace that I'm trying to get all my musicians into. Aim for no wrong notes as your starting point. And I feel like I need to emphasize that because I've been playing in churches my whole musical life, and churches are the places in the world where aiming for no wrong notes is the only target we're trying to hit. Like the church is the place where maybe we only played a few wrong notes and we still congratulate each other. As opposed to it being the starting point, it's like the finish line. When I was 13, I would show up to worship team rehearsal at church on Wednesday night, and the worship leader would put these sheets of music on my music stand, and I would see right then and there at the beginning of rehearsal what the songs were that we were going to play. And then we would spend the course of the rehearsal learning what the wrong notes even were. And that was rehearsal. So then by the time Sunday morning got there, it's like, man, I hope we remember that. I hope we all remember what the wrong notes were, and I hope we can successfully get through both the services without hitting any of those wrong notes.
4 days later.
Exactly. That always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Not because I'm out in front of the curve. I want to respect this more than it seems that, like, could you give me the songs ahead of time? You know, and then in the late 90s, we were getting tapes. I would get a cassette tape in the mail. And then it was like in the early 2000s, I would get a CD in the mail. These days, we have Planning Center. MP3s that we can just text each other. I tell everybody on my team, okay, you've got the set list and the songs well in advance. I want you to show up to rehearsal. We have our rehearsals in Phoenix on Thursday. I want you to show up to rehearsal already in the bottom of the pyramid. You're already there. You're ready to play the service without any wrong notes before rehearsal even starts. Because, back to the bandwidth thing, we're going to spend rehearsal getting into the middle of the pyramid. And that takes some bandwidth. And if all of your bandwidth is getting eaten up by just existing successfully in this part of the pyramid, you've got no bandwidth to spend in ascending. With me? So that's like, as I'm coaching the musicians that I lead, as I'm introducing some of the new players into our community, I'm kind of establishing these ground rules. Like, hey, everybody is going to show up on Thursday in the bottom of the pyramid already. So if you don't want to stand out, you got to be in the bottom of the pyramid already too. And then we're going to spend rehearsal, no matter what campus you're at, no matter what other musicians you're with or who your worship leader is that weekend. Because everybody, at my church, everybody rotates, all the locations. We're all going to be spending rehearsal getting into the middle of the pyramid. And the middle of the pyramid is, I call it helpful. So it's not just that we're not wrong. Now we're actually helpful. Remembering back to when I used to decide whether to use the ride cymbal or the hi-hats on the verse. Because as long as I play in time, both of them feel not wrong. But which one actually helps? I'm also remembering my first paid gig in a church was when I was in college at Bethel University in the Twin Cities, not related to Bethel Church. Bethel University is a Baptist General Conference school. And I got hired to play at this Presbyterian church in South Minneapolis every Sunday. And they would hire a bass player and a drummer, and then the staff piano player, organist would play, and then there was a choir director guy who would function as the worship leader. Staff piano player, like, we're definitely not playing with a click. And I learned right away, like, oh, she's the one that sets the time. And if she rushes, I better follow her. Or if she drags, I mean, she's not really listening to me. And she was always just crushing every measure of the song with her left hand, playing more than one note with her left hand on the piano. And if you know much about the piano, you know that creates quite a bit of sonic presence in the low end that doesn't necessarily help. For her to play chords up here while the bass player occupies down here, all right, but she's not playing wrong chords, okay? So I can't really tell her, don't do that. First of all, she's the staff, like, keyboardist, like the music director of the moment. Second of all, she's not doing anything technically wrong. Okay, so this is the difference between not wrong and helpful. I'm thinking to myself, that's not very helpful that you always do that. I want to try to define helpful for you here, okay? What I mean by this middle category. And let's go back to my solo earlier, my drum solo. I don't expect you to remember it verbatim. Just I want you to think about how it made you feel. In other words, when you watch a movie, the movie has scenes. The scenes correlate to the plot of the movie, and there's always a soundtrack. And I want you to think about how the music sounds in that moment when Mel Gibson is trying to rouse the troops his Irish friends to go fight the British. Yeah, Scottish, yes. They can take our lives, but they're never going to take our freedom. Like that moment, there's some music happening. And that music is really helping that scene. It's the kind of music that makes you feel the same thing that his speech made you feel. That's how soundtrack artists do that. That's what helping means. So if you're willing, think about my solo and try to describe, like, out loud. I mean, like, this isn't rhetorical. If anybody's willing, vulnerable, take a stab at describing what kind of scene in what kind of movie would that solo have helped. I mean, I can tell you what kind of scene it wouldn't have helped. The Braveheart scene. It wasn't regal enough. But it was something. What was it?
An uphill climb where you need some push behind you to get to the top.
Oh, yeah, okay. And maybe, I'm picturing a dude maybe rock climbing, but not at a point in the film where he's conquering his fears that we as the viewers of the film, we've had the fears articulated for us, and now we can really see the meaning behind this rock. It's almost like introductory scene, like while the credits are still rolling at the beginning of the movie. Dude's rock climbing, like all we really know is that here's a guy and he apparently likes rock climbing. And that sound was going behind it. Have any of you guys seen the movie Birdman? Whole soundtrack is solo drum set. It's pretty incredible. But there's a certain kind of feeling that comes from a solo drum set. And I bet you can tell what kinds of scenes that movie doesn't have. Does that make sense? This is very artsy-fartsy here, but this is how the middle of the pyramid works. Songs are like movies. It's just a collection of moments, scenes. The moment of the bridge is a different moment than the second chorus. The moment of the turnaround after the first chorus is a different moment than the intro of the song. And it correlates to the plot as it's unfolding. I'm trying to figure out what that plot is. I'm trying to pay attention to what moment I'm in, and I'm trying to use my instrument to help that. And when I'm asking myself those questions, what kind of moment is this? How can my instrument help? The answers become so much easier to acquire. Versus like, what should I play here? Which I could answer that question of like, what do I want to play here? And the answer of what do I want to play here comes from just like my own boredom, or maybe my own preferences, and not necessarily the moment. If I'm not paying attention to the plot of the song, which has to do with the lyrics, yes, but it also has to do with the contribution of the other instruments.
I think if you are paying attention to the moment in the song, then what you want to play is the right thing.
That's my point. If I'm asking myself the questions like, what do I want to play? But I'm not asking myself the question, what's this moment like? It's at that moment that my wants get informed by other things. Like, well, what I want to play is my new ride cymbal that I just got. Because I'm really pumped about it. Yeah, what I want to play is my new wah pedal. It's like, the wah pedal is not very helpful in most of the moments that a worship service is trying to create. I'll go out on a limb and say that. A wah pedal is pretty helpful in the moments that Earth, Wind, and Fire was trying to create.
But used subtly, a wah pedal can be beautiful if you only move it a couple degrees.
I'm not saying that it isn't.
But if you're going waka 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 waka,
Which is what,
a tender moment,
that's what most people want to do with their wah pedal.
what will the congregation interpret this as?
But that interpretation thing, check it out, that interpretation thing really matters. A cowbell has associations that I can't transcend. I can't unlatch the cowbell from the associations of like arena rock music, like 80s arena rock, or Latin music, or a joke. Like that's when the cowbell shows up. So if I don't want to invoke any of those feelings, If the moment that I'm trying to accomplish, if the scene that I'm trying to underscore is none of those things, then I can't use a cowbell because it won't be interpreted any other way because of associations that I didn't set in the minds of my listeners. There are associations that I can certainly observe. It's part of why I listen to music so much. Like, wow, I'm noticing that country music uses a fiddle a certain way, but so does Americana music. And Americana music invokes a different emotion than country music usually does. So the fiddle can do a couple different things. And like as an MD, as a producer, those kinds of sticky notes that I write on the inside of my head, like here's what a fiddle can and can't do. And the sticky notes, they keep gathering the more I listen to music. Those things are so helpful when I'm trying to figure out how I myself can be helpful with my instrument in a moment. Does this make sense?
Yes.
It's the middle of the pyramid, helpful. Not just wrong, helpful. We spend Thursday rehearsal making sure that all our parts are helpful. And sometimes the thing that was on the MP3 isn't as helpful because the context of the MP3 was so different than the context we're actually in. This is Hillsong playing in like an arena, and my worship team is playing in like a 300-seat, like our smallest auditorium is like a 300-seat room. And things are not equally helpful in those two environments. Or perhaps there's nothing in the stems on the laptop, and there's only one guitar player. So instead of playing that like kind of naked lead line, the thing that would be helpful is if you added a little more muscle and played some lower notes and filled it out a little bit. But the MP3, the lead guitar part, yeah, I get it. Thank you for learning the lead guitar part, but I want us all to be helpful right now. That's part of my answer to your question earlier. When somebody's not carrying their weight, I will oftentimes try to just articulate to them what kind of weight I'm looking for them to carry, without accusing them of not carrying it.
Right.
But just trying to like re-articulate, here's the moment that we're going for. What can you do? What else can you do besides what you just played that is kind of like more in line with this moment?
I like that because you still let them have ownership of their part and their talent and everything. You're
Absolutely.
Like, let's explore your space a little bit and see what else we can come up with.
Absolutely.
And not giving them what to play, right?
This
So often when you do give someone a part, if you hand them a part like that in a moment like that, it's not natural for them, and they're not going to regurgitate it properly later, and everyone's going to be disappointed.
they might even harbor a little bit of resentment about it too. That buy-in, that ownership thing, man, I'm really interested in that. Mostly because the act of being creative together is a pretty potent factor in creating relationships and unity. I almost immediately become friends with the people that I'm playing music with. Just playing music with them, it's kind of like a repeated trust fall exercise. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna come crashing in with the kick and the cymbals. You're gonna play that bass note, right? Because if you don't, it's gonna feel like I was wrong. Or vice versa. We're all looking at each other like, you're gonna do the modulation, aren't you? Like, we're all gonna do the modulation, aren't we? Because I'm about to go up a full step. And then we all do the modulation together and we all look at each other and it's just like, mental high five. And it deepens relationships quickly. So long as the act of creating has that inspiration and joy in it. And I'll be the first, we'll go to the spiritual direction for a second. At a church, I'm about people. Music doesn't matter to me anymore. If we're talking about the kingdom of God, music is a means, not an end. People are the point. I have people on my worship team because I care about people. Otherwise, I would just put the keyboard part in the stems. The stems are never late to rehearsal and they never miss a note. Like, why have a keyboard player? Like, I care about the keyboard player. I care about the person. And I really want to lean hard into the unity and relational equity that being creative together that creates. So I'm really interested in you taking ownership of your part. Not because your part's going to be better even, but because our community is going to be healthier for that. That's a side note. Your point about how I would deal with a particular player in what they're playing and creating buy-in for them. It leads me to the top of the pyramid, okay? The top of the pyramid is what I call perfect. But perfect has an asterisk next to it, and the asterisk says, like, within the realm of what is possible right now in this moment. Not perfect as in objectively perfect, because nobody knows that. Like, who among us can tell me the best burger ever? None of us have ever tried all the burgers, so we don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows the best burger ever unless they've tried all the burgers, and nobody has tried that. Nobody knows what the perfect part is. But we do know the parameters that we're in right now and the way that I can really capitalize on those parameters. One of the parameters is the skill level of all the people I'm playing with. Sometimes I'm playing with a guitar player who doesn't have very good time. His accuracy with playing lots of notes gets a little swimmy. A better analogy would be a bass player, because I'm trying to line up my kick drum with the bass player. Let's say there's a song that has quite a bit of bass notes and quite a bit of kick drum notes. But this bass drum player I'm playing with isn't super accurate with his timing, so almost all the notes are sounding like flams. With me here? I choose to play fewer notes. Instead of, man, you gotta work on your timing. I don't wanna introduce that energy to our group. So I'm just gonna selectively choose which notes I'm gonna not play. When he plays and I don't play with him, it doesn't land like a flam. The whole thing is sounding a little better. Like, the perfect drum part for that song, that weekend, with that bass player, doesn't include some kick drum notes that I played last weekend when we did the same song, but I was with a different bass player. Feel me? Yes. This has a lot to do with the size of the room I'm in. Like, how hard should I hit? The top of the pyramid forces me to recognize that I'm in a small room and there's no drum shield, and I gotta adjust. That's what perfect is. And again, you gotta work to get from the middle to the top. So at my church, we're spending Thursday rehearsal getting from the bottom to the middle. And then we start the task of executing 5 services in a row over the span of like 18 hours. And that gives us a really unique microscope to try to get from the middle to the top. It's hard to get to from the middle to the top when you only have a one-off performance. That was always one of the frustrating things to me when I was younger. We would play 2 services at my church, and some of the songs in the first service would be different than the songs in the second service, because the first service was the traditional service. A couple of them would copy over, but most of the set list I would only get one shot at. And I was frustrated when I would finish and I was like, ooh, I could have done that better. I didn't do anything wrong, and everything that I did was helpful, but I could have done that a little bit better. I wish I had another chance. And in my context in Phoenix, we have another chance 45 minutes from now. And so I'm telling all my players, like, guys, eyes up, ears open, antennas out the whole weekend. Watch for where you can get from the middle of the pyramid to the top. If you're watching for it, you'll find it. Sometimes you'll find it in a way you didn't expect. Like, oh, what if I play fewer notes on the kick drum? Like, no, that's the kick drum pattern. Like, it doesn't have to be. The moment's not different. If I skip a couple of those notes, everything just sounds a little better. Well, last time I played this, I used this amount of drive on my guitar tone, and this amount of overdrive felt really good last time. I'm like, yeah, that was last time. Now we're here, and we have 2 guitars. Last time you only had 1. And I'd kind of like your drive to shape, your overdrive to shape itself to blend with the overdrive of the other guitar player in a way that really, like, symbiotic, and now the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. There's so many specific versions of this, and most of the time, these kinds of elevations in the pyramid journey come from collaborating. Like, me and the bass player are talking it out to get from the bottom into the middle. And then me and the worship leader are talking it out to get from the middle to the top. And we have another service, and we do it, and it's like, that worked. And then the guitar player who has overheard our conversation is like, what about this also? And we're like, ooh, man, there's that collaborating thing again. There's that creative spirit again. There's that unity building, community building magic that playing music has. That's why I'm in the game, guys. I mean, I'm on this tour right now with my buddies in Matt's band because I love playing music, and I'm exercising a certain part of my personality to get up on stage and play in front of a bunch of ticket holders with a cool light show. But when I'm in a worship team context, excellence looks a little different. It has people as the objective. And that's why I'm following this pyramid design. That's it. That's the excellence pyramid. That's my presentation on excellence. Please now ask any question. What's your name, man? Roland. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming.
It's my pleasure, man.
And thanks for the sound. It's really cool. How, just as an instrumentalist, can you go from the bottom to the middle or the middle to the top? Forget about like how it sounds with other instruments, and you're taking into consideration you being unselfish for the greater sound, the greater effect. Aside from just increasing your skill, is there sort of like a cap on being able to move to the top or from the bottom to the middle based on ability? And how do you address sort of, just as an instrumentalist,
Yeah.
transcending your level?
I think I understand what you're describing. First of all, let me say that this journey from the bottom to the middle to the top is a week in, week out journey. Because when we get done playing the services on Sunday, it all resets. And if I intend to even be at the bottom of the pyramid by the time the next Thursday's rehearsal comes, I've got to do a whole nother week's worth of preparation. So this isn't like a meta thing. Like, me as a musician, I always permanently exist at the top. In fact, that's why I really love touring, because like this tour that I'm on right now is 26 shows, I think, and we've got 6 left. And it wasn't until like show 12 that I felt like every moment of the 90 minutes of our show was at the top of the pyramid. Like, we spent 6 days rehearsing, 6 10-hour days of rehearsals before the first show even happened. And at that point, everybody's at least in the middle of the pyramid. And a lot of the moments of the set are in the top. But not all of it, because it takes some discovery that you can't really acquire without time, without just reps, you know? So I would argue that everybody in Matt's band is like pro-level musician. These are great musicians that I'm getting to play with. Very experienced guys. So they're coming in with a skill level that's pretty sharp. But we still have to do that journey. Like, I can still choose to show up to the first day of rehearsal not even being in the bottom of the pyramid yet, because I didn't do my prep time. Does that make sense? So that's an important, I think, context behind your question. The answer of how to like bring yourself up without the collaboration or without an MD telling you what's what, I think it just has to do with listening. Listening to music. I'm saying like on your own time, listening to albums. I don't mean listening to the songs for this weekend. I mean listening to music. There's so much music in the world. There's so much music, especially with modern technology. It's so available. You can listen to anything you want. And you could spend every waking moment for the rest of your life listening to music. You wouldn't listen to all of it. There's so much insight in that. And for me, what I learn from listening to music is oftentimes kind of like what I learn when I read the scriptures. Like when I was younger, I thought, okay, I'm gonna read this Bible passage, and then I gotta figure out what it means. I gotta figure out what it means now after I'm done reading it. I'm going to bed, doing my devotions like a good Christian kid. It's 9:07. I just got done reading the Bible passage that I started reading at 9. And I expect at 9:08 that I will have uncovered what it means. And I would get frustrated with myself that I couldn't. I'm like, I don't know what this means. What does this mean for me? Ever heard people ask that about the scriptures? What does this mean for me? I get that response from some of my students. I spend about 10 or 15 hours a week teaching the player community at my church. Bass players, the guitar players, not just the drummers. And a lot of it involves listening exercises. And, like, okay, what should I take from this? I don't know that I want you to take anything in particular. Just listen to it, just absorb it. Let's wait and see what happens. Because as has happened in my life with the scriptures, moments arise. And the fact that I read something and it's pertinent to that moment, like suddenly the dots connect. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know this moment was gonna happen. And I certainly didn't know that scripture passage I read last week was gonna connect to this. But wow, am I glad I read it? Because I feel like I've got some insight about what to do in this moment. And musically, that happens to me all the time. I'm in these contexts where something is happening and I'm like, oh, dude, that Carrie Underwood album that I was listening to a couple months ago, the thing that he was doing over the bridge, that would fit really well right here. And I absolutely didn't make that observation when I first listened to the album. That is addicting. Because the first few times that happened, I'm like, oh man, I gotta listen to as much music as possible. Because who knows what kind of lines I'll start drawing. I think those observations and the lines that you might draw between like what's appropriate, and that's part of how you can elevate your. Like I remember being told as a youngster, like what you do with the kick drum is you match the bass player exactly. And I was like, great. And then I heard the first Maroon 5 album and I was like, see, they're doing it. It's like every kick pattern has a bass note right with it. It's just beautiful. And then I heard a U2 album and I was like, he's doing it wrong. Because Adam Clayton is playing all sorts of bass notes that Larry Mullen is not hitting on the kick drum. But I was like, this feels really great. I love this. It certainly doesn't sound like Maroon 5, but I still really love it. And I'm like writing another little Post-it note to stick on the inside of my head. Does that answer your question? Totally. Listening to music, man, I hope if you take nothing away from this, it's that. Like listen to music as, if you're a musician, you gotta listen to music as much as a Christian would be reading the scriptures. That's what I think.
I get a mic, okay.
Tell me your name.
I'm Jamie.
Hi, Jamie.
That's actually a really good lead into my question because, like, for example, I went to like a Lecrae and Mineo concert they had in the city.
Yeah.
And for me, I really like that genre of music, so it feels like worship. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
And I have a really hard time differentiating like what it means to be a performer versus doing worship. So I don't know, what would you say? Because I don't know, I just don't get it because I spent a lot more of my life performing than doing worship, but they feel the same, like you're creating moments, you know? So what's the like biggest difference between the two for you versus performing and worship?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, performing on some level involves entertaining. That's certainly part of it. People buy tickets to a show because they want to be entertained. As someone who knows the power of music to create a whoa moment and not just a wow moment, I intend to give the people as many whoa moments as I can. But I know that they also want some wow moments. And how can I juxtapose, how can I bring those together and kind of lay them over each other? In a worship context, I'm almost never trying to create a wow moment. That's a big difference. I'll give you a specific example. I will grab the cymbal sometimes to end a phrase, right? This is like a vacuum. And when I'm performing, I'll go like that, because that's fun to watch. Musically, it accomplished the exact same thing as the first version. But if I did that in church, in a worship setting, that'd be a little off-putting, wouldn't it? So some of the difference for me is in that performing, like wow versus whoa, entertainment factor. When I'm performing, I'm trying to entertain you. And when I'm in a worship environment, I'm trying to not be seen. Or like I'm trying to not be noticed. I'm trying to get their chins to go up. That's a thing that I picked up when I was in high school. Like when the people really sing, they lift their chins up. Like they're physically trying to get more air into their lungs. And I started almost like paying attention to what I did and the effect that it had. And it was like, man, on this build, if I just use the kick drum and wait to do any building at all until the last two measures of the phrase, like the chins really go up right around bar 4. Whereas if I start building from the very beginning of it, it doesn't seem to have the same effect. I mean, that's like me just making observations to myself. But like playing just the kick drum is boring, maybe subjectively to me as the drummer, compared to doing the build from the beginning. And maybe playing just the kick drum is less like the Death Cab for Cutie album that I listened to last week that I really liked and I'm trying to emulate. Like, no, I want to be like Death Cab. And so I'm going to do the build right away. But I'm not factoring in like, no, I'm trying to help these people sing. Like, I don't want them to see me right now. I want them to see the truth of the gospel that we're singing about. I want them to see the God that we're singing to. And like, what can I play that causes them to see that? I'm almost never asking myself that question when I'm performing, because that's rarely the objective, even though I think the Spirit of God is still there. When I played for a while in a pop band called Owl City. Those guys make music that is really positive. It's very uplifting. And I watched it have that effect on our audience every night. And he's not singing worship lyrics in his like radio hits. He's got a couple tunes that get played on Christian radio that are worshipful, but they weren't in the set list. But I could still feel the Spirit of God there. Like there's a truth in this room that I believe comes from the Creator, and I'm happy to be in this moment right now. But I'm also trying to entertain you a little bit versus like at my church on Sunday morning. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. Who else? Anybody? Any questions at all? Even about anything other than something that I specifically addressed in the excellence pyramid?
So when you're encouraging or coaching up your musicians as an MD, are there any things that you notice are sort of the common sort of go-tos as far as this is what I practice in order to get better, things that aren't helpful or that don't translate into just for the worship environment, the worship context? Like certain rudiments that you practice that actually don't end up translating to what we do. Certain transitional phrases or pieces that we do naturally because that's kind of what we do on our own downtime, but that don't like sort of accelerate the process of getting better at being helpful.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I mean, there's a couple like real immediate specific examples, like a double kick pedal. Like what a double kick pedal brings, like the thing that it can do that a single pedal can't do is rarely helpful in a worship context. What's your name, man? Goatee? Scott. You pointed out that a wah pedal is not universally unhelpful in a worship context. There are things you can do with it to create frequency movement that are kind of interesting. But for the majority of the way a wah pedal is used, that's also like unhelpful.
Right.
And
Also coming at it from the keyboard player's perspective.
sure.
So I'll use guitar effects.
Yeah.
My Rhodes or my Warlicks or
Yep.
maybe a little different way than guitar players do it. I try to not be so guitar-like with what I do,
That's great. That's oftentimes how I think about the hi-hats, like gradually opening over the course of 6 bars instead of just being closed or open. Subtle sonic, like timbre movements like that. Yeah, that's great. But to get back to your question, there are specific things that I could point to as like, don't do that in worship music, or here's an exercise. Most of the time when I'm working with my guys, I'm trying to think on a larger level than getting real specific. I don't want to give them the opportunity or the invitation to think that this is just a bunch of specifics. Like I want to kind of pull them out of those weeds, look at the whole thing. And so I oftentimes I find myself spending a lot of time hammering home the bandwidth idea. Like I can hear you playing with almost no buffer. Like when I'm playing with you, I can tell that it's eating all of your bandwidth to do this. And I wonder what your decision making would be like if you had any buffer to listen to how it sounds and adjust accordingly. So what amount of prep can you do to give yourself some buffer? That's not an exercise, it's more like a meta thing, but I've gotten a lot of mileage out of that with my various musicians. I've also gotten a lot of mileage in discussing this movie soundtrack concept. As musicians, we have kind of like the left brain of what we're doing, which is the mechanics and the analysis and here's the physical logistics of how to play this thing. And then there's the right brain, which is like the emotional fabric that the part is creating in the room. Human beings respond to the right brain side of music. Instrumentalists and musicians are the ones who get riled up about the left brain side, because they're the ones who know how that works. So like fellow drummers are like, ooh, that was a complicated fill. Nobody else in the room cares. How does the fill feel, right? Or me as a drummer, when I'm learning something that's really challenging and I finally overcome it, I'm very happy with myself. But nobody else in the room cares because they don't know that it was ever challenging to begin with. So I'm kind of like constantly asking my players to not consider the left brain as much as they have been and consider the right brain instead. Try to not get soaked up in the details and the mechanics of what you're doing. Consider how it makes you feel, how it makes other people feel. And then, if you can, start trying to draw lines between those. Like, oh, opening up the filter over the course of the bridge, like Scott just said, like that's the feeling that comes from it. Okay, so what kind of scene in what kind of movie deserves that feeling? Like that, I'm spending most of my time with my guys talking about that stuff. They don't really get anywhere near our music team unless they've got some level of proficiency. So like, here's an exercise. I don't really do a lot of that. Actually, I will show you one, if that.
Yeah,
what-
because it's sort of, this is all. But like in a roundabout way, it's sort of asking, how do we do helpful things prior to
Yeah.
doing not hitting the wrong notes?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so what's a helpful way to practice where this is actually going to, like, well, it's tone shaping, it's what I'm playing on transition.
Yep. Jason and I were talking in the car. It's very helpful to make, from my perspective, it's very helpful to make your own charts. So I don't know how you guys will respond to this. The beginning of last year, I stopped putting charts on Planning Center. I told all the musicians, like, hey guys, I'm not going to give you charts anymore. Nothing. There's no charts.
It's just the song.
Just the songs. Good to meet you. Jeremy, right?
Yes.
Right on, dude.
Appreciate it. Just a side note, I appreciate how you are finding a balance. It seems like Jason does a really good job at this too, of giving people space, like a wide enough lane. But then also, there's an essence to a song we have to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to move, this bus forward. And there are certain times when I'm going to make a decision for you.
Yeah.
How did you achieve that? Because my daughter wants me to go.
Oh man,
How
great.
did you, if I can interrupt?
Yeah, no, that's great.
How did you achieve that balance? Because
Yeah, sure.
But like, how do you find the balance?
It's long game strategy. Like for me, it took a lot of attempts at the heavy-handed, like, no, just do what I'm saying,
Right.
and then watching the fruit of that play out negatively. Like, oh, you did what I asked you to do, but now I wish I hadn't have done that. You know, that took a few times. Like even I remember being in college in bands with my friends and being just always kind of like the domineering guy. Like, come on, just play this. Like, and then like this isn't none of us are winning. Like you're doing the thing I asked you to do, but we didn't win. None of us won. So like it's some time. You know, like I'm 38 now and I've seen that play out badly and I've seen the other version play out well. And I'm like, I think this is maybe a sign that I should pay attention to. That's some of it. But then other just like general recognizing that life seems to always exist in this balance. Like any sort of lopsidedness in life tends to be unhealthy, regardless of what topic we're talking about. No, just dip the needle all the way over here and you'll be fine. Like, no, not with anything. So I'm trying to apply that in the music landscape as I find it in my personal life, you know?
It's delicate.
It's delicate.
What I appreciate is that you recognize you're able to I think verbalize with the language that maybe we don't have yet of like it's both. It's both.
Yep.
And it's not clear.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to be a pendulum depending on mood or people or room.
And the effort that you put into discerning the answer is maybe the point.
Yeah.
Like just keep putting in that effort.
Yeah.
And good things will happen.
Love it.
Right on, Jeremy. Thanks. I was going to demonstrate an exercise. Do this with me, okay? I'm going to count eighth notes. Eighth notes are counted like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Basic stuff, okay? Clap with me on the and of 3. Ready? 1 and 2 and 3 and. Yep, you all got it. Okay? This time, let's clap on 1. And I'm going to continue counting. And when I get done with 4 and, I'm going to go back to 1 again. But don't clap again on 1. Clap on the and of 1 instead. We're going to scoot it over. Okay? So I'll give you 3 and 4 and to get ready, and then we'll start with clap on 1. I go through. Next time, and of 1. Next time, 2. Okay? I'm going to go a little faster, though. All right? 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. Right? Okay. That's not as easy as it sounds on paper. It takes a pretty diligent attentiveness to the counting cycle and where I am in the counting cycle. Almost everybody benefits from that exercise. My keyboard players, my bass players, my guitar players, almost none of them can do it at first. At least not that fast. That's the thing about rhythmic exercises. If you want to make it more achievable, just slow it down. If you want to make it more challenging, speed it up a little bit. And not in the mechanics of that, because it's not hard to clap. It's not like you guys were tired, right? But like suddenly your mind is like, wait a minute, which count am I on? I'll do that with my drummers with like kick drum, 16th notes, all the way across. 1. Right, I'm just moving a 16th note each time. Each of those notes feel different. When I hear a drummer play this, that extra snare drum that falls in the E of 3, it has a particular vibe. The E of 3 feels a certain way. It is a 16th note, and the of 2 is also a 16th note. But those feelings are different. Right? Like if the E of 3 versus the of 2, and I want to know the feeling that each of those have, and I want to have ready access as to which one I want to use. And I find most worship team musicians do not have that level of familiarity with the 16th note landscape. So just the exercise of clapping, or like grab your guitar and strum any chord at all. I don't care. This is about you knowing where the of 3 is. The E of 3 versus the of 2. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3. Right? Like that's got a certain vibe. And if you can sit there and play 1, the next time E of 1, the next time and of 1, all the way across. Check this out. You get all the way over to the of 4, and then you do it backwards. So like of 4 next time, and of 4 next time, E of 4 next time, 4. And like just work your way across and then back. It's super easy to do by yourself at home. It's very frustrating when you realize you can't quite do it yet. And then it's super easy to tell whether or not you're going to be able to do it next time we get together. Because I'm doing all these lessons with my guys. I'm like, just work on that rhythm exercise. You know, and then I'm texting them like, hey, how's that rhythm exercise going? And they're like, it's a little harder than I thought. Yeah, I know. That's why I gave it to you, bro. I can tell you don't know where the of 4 is. I was asking you the other day to play this note on the of 4, and you kept hitting the and of 4 instead. Like, they're close. They're next door neighbors, but they're not the same. That's like saying, like, please hit a G, and they keep hitting an A flat. Like, that's not, they're next door to each other, but they're not the same. Being able to play a scale from any position on your instrument, whether it's a major scale or a minor scale. I just like point at a fret. Play me an ascending minor scale from here. And they're versus like, like, do they have it or not? That's a pretty great, helpful exercise. On the keyboard, you know, we have like actual, like play me an A flat, ascending major scale. Ascending and descending A flat major scale. Like start here and then go up. Like, oh, I've never really done that. I've never played an A flat. I've always just played in C.
Brain can know what the notes are, but your fingers
Right.
haven't done it before.
Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you've just used like positions.
Well, guitar players do.
Right. Keyboard players don't, but guitar players, the positions don't cross over to every fret. So when I point at this run fret and they don't know anything outside of a position, they're like, oh. So that's another, I mean, that's both of those exercises probably come across as very elementary, but the amount of bandwidth that's necessary to execute them is not elementary unless they've done the work, and the work has far-reaching results.
Well, and it really can become a practical application when you're in it now, and you've got a song, and you've got a singer they're doing it, but that day, they lost a half a step or a whole step. And if you've got confidence in your band to drop something a half step or a whole step,
Oh, absolutely.
then you feel free as an MD to do whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's actually a requirement. Like, I talk to the guys about that when we're in the process of getting to know each other, and I'm trying to figure out if they can really get on board with our team or not. You know, we're playing a song. I was telling these guys over lunch, one of the things I like to do, when I meet a new musician, the first thing we do is have coffee. We just hang, just get to know them, learn a lot from that point. Next thing we do is get together at the studio and play. Just play some stuff, like jam. And then oftentimes I'll go over to my desk at the studio, pull up an Ableton session that has stems from one of our original records at the church, play a song that I'm confident they've almost never heard, because we've never played it in the worship service and they probably don't own this record. And I'm like, I want you to play this song for me before you leave here. Like, not next time we get together, because I want to watch your learning process. Like, here's a pen and paper if you want to make a chart for yourself. Ooh, I was going to say that earlier. I stopped giving charts to the teams. The act of making a chart for yourself is so helpful. My goodness. You're answering so many questions that you never knew to ask when you have to make your own chart.
and you solidify those memories by writing.
Yes. So that's why I stopped giving charts out to the guys. First of all, I was a little tired of like certain things in the charts being incorrect and everybody arguing with me about what the chart said versus what the MP3 was.
I was going to
Like,
say, what you have to make a decision on how willing you are to invest your own time in, or maybe another director's time in
that's my,
answering those arguments at rehearsal, or feel free to call me if you're not sure what to do. As
yes,
director in the chart.
that's my job at the church.
But
Like,
I think the investment is worth it because they learn.
totally. I have only seen the performance level and skill level of our players go up since we yanked the charts out. So that's another like specific boots on the ground, like here's how we can improve. Aside from the week in, week out prep pyramid, just on a larger meta level. I don't want to take up too much of the time tonight. Jason's gonna bring me back to Napa So we got a bit of a drive. Anybody got like one more question that they were burning with?
I didn't get to hear you play because I had to put my kids to sleep. And then you did a drum solo.
I did.
Can you play one more time?
Yeah, I'll do another one. How about this, just for fun? Somebody give me a movie scene, not an actual movie scene, make one up. And I'm gonna try to like accompany it.
I know you've got one. I don't think you went any farther.
I don't mean a real movie because I might not have seen it.
All right, so no problem. So I've been working on a play for about 4 months about death.
Okay.
And about an elderly grandmother that it was time to celebrate their life because they were 90, and about an 8-year-old child who passes away from a cancer that they didn't do anything to get. And it has been horrifying for me to do, to be totally honest. And it's in all kinds of time stamps, all kinds of crazy stuff I've been working on. But I would love anything that, because honestly I'm totally stuck, and maybe I'll
Okay.
send you a check.
Okay. So you just gave me the bird's eye view of the whole plot, the whole storyline. Describe one of the scenes.
One scene that I have now is a person underneath. I'm from Philadelphia, so it's the Ben Franklin Bridge. They're sitting underneath, and they're contemplating that their father had just passed away, taking his own life. And it's indiscriminate about how he took his own life. But it's a young, early 20s woman, and I have this super somber piece in B that I'm going into almost a lighter, but it just doesn't work, man. It's stuck on. She's sitting there. The sun is just about set. It's probably about 6:30, so it's about fall time. She's wearing dark-colored clothing, but not funeral clothing. So she's dressed, regular clothes like you're wearing right now. And she has just come from getting the news, not seeing the body, but got the news. And she is sitting on this bench, and the scenery that's on the stage that I got for the scene is, it's a picture of the bridge, it's the sun, it's a lighting behind coming low, and she's clearly visible, but what's in the past, or what's in the back, isn't quite. And what they're literally showing as her past is fading away because he's not there anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I said, it's
Yep, I get it. That's
overly discriminating.
no, that's helpful for me because I can put myself in the emotional experience of being in that, like, at that point in the film. Like, if this is a movie and I'm watching it, how am I going to be feeling as a viewer as I get inside? And that's what all I'm going to try to do is create that feeling. Now, we got to remember that I don't have any other instruments with me here. So, like, a solo drum set, the first time that's ever happened as a film score was the movie Birdland. And there was actually some controversy because I think they won a Grammy for that, and then it got revoked because they were like, it's not an actual soundtrack if it's just a drum solo. Oh. Like all of us drummers are like, what? Okay, anyway. That's what I got. I mean, I'm thinking about, like, all right, I'm not gonna do anything with high velocity because it doesn't feel like a high velocity moment. But I'm also not gonna do anything overly complex because that moment feels like it's already complex with emotion, and like busyness would be distracting, like not helping the trajectory. They would almost like work against each other. Like a busy bass line and a busy guitar line. It's like, if you're gonna be busy, I'm gonna not be. Like if the emotional quotient of that moment is gonna be busy, I'm gonna be sparse. Or, I mean, that's my thought process. And then I get in it and I'm like, okay, you're not, like nobody's watching this movie right now, Steve. They're watching you play. So I gotta be present in the actual moment I'm in, which isn't the movie, it's us. We were talking about that before this whole thing even started, just like as musicians, what can we do to always be present in the moment that we're in, regardless of what we planned ahead of time that the moment might be, or even what we thought we wanted the moment to be? Like, nope, none of those things matter. What moment is it actually? You know? All right, thanks again for this invitation. It's really great to hang with you guys. Thank you.
What's your favorite film score?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, they always change. I really enjoyed the soundtrack for the movie Arrival.
Okay.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Johan Johansson wrote that, and then he passed away shortly after.
Really?
Yeah, but I really enjoyed that. You listen to Song Exploder? The Song Exploder on that film is really interesting.